Hello, hello. Is anyone on here already? I can see um I can see comments from two people, Abigail and Chikere. I don't know if you're still here. If you're here, can you just maybe give me a thumbs up? Thank you for joining. Welcome, welcome. And I hope you can hear me okay. I hope the camera is good as well. Hello. Okay. Yes. I was trying to log onto my laptop, um, just so that I could have some separation between the comments and the live stream. But yeah, I've turned it off now. Sorry about the echo, Vicky. I'm good. How are you, Vicky? How are you, Lamb? Hello. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Yeah. Okay. I hope everyone has been well. I hope your week has been better than my past 2 weeks. Yeah. How is everyone going? Can you hear me okay? Oh, wow, Vicky. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, your first volunteer shift. I hope that went well. I hope you at least enjoyed your first shift. Hi, Chikere. How are you? Thank you. Yes, okay. I am I am happy now knowing that you can hear me okay. How have you been? Um, Hello, Victoria. Thank you. Okay. I am aiming for like a 7:05 start. That's just 1 minute away. But thank you so much for joining, all of you who are here already. We're going to kick off in about a minute. Okay, it's actually 7:05. So thank you all so much for joining. I don't want to waste your time. I know that your time is valuable, and I am really happy and grateful that you took out this time to join me in this live stream. So let's make it productive. Um, yeah, so I thought it would be a great idea to sort of have this clarity session because from some of the questions that I've been receiving on the channel, I get the sense that people want some clarity around their plans. Hi, Nate. Welcome. Welcome. I hope you're well. Thanks for joining. So yeah, as I was saying, I thought it would be a great idea to have this clarity session because I feel like people have lots of questions about their relocation, about migrating to Australia, beyond the obvious questions around visas and what course to study if you want to come in here through study. There are some other, I would call them like pain points, okay, that, or maybe even blind spots, maybe I'll call them blind spots that sometimes are not really obvious in your plans. And those little blind spots can then come up in very unexpected ways to either derail your plans or there might be things that just cause you a lot of pain along that journey. So I felt, especially from my own experience and also from talking to other people, I felt it would be good to talk about some of those things, some of those finer points that are related to your plans to migrate, which you might not really find a lot of resources around, or even if you wanted to search YouTube to get all those answers, it would be really tedious hopping from video to video or from channel to channel trying to find those answers. So I am hoping that this clarity session is one where we can address all of those things together. And feel free to drop your comments as we go on. And I thought I would also kind of maybe touch a little bit on some of those questions that people have asked me in the past, but which I feel is really important to bring on here and discuss them as well, because then everything would be in one place. Like even if people want to watch this video after this, then it's one video where a lot of those questions would be answered in one video and it would be easy to access. So I can see a question from Vicky. You said you're still thinking if you should try to get your visa through social worker or community worker. I guess it will depend on what experience I gain in the 2 years of study. Are you talking about your PR visa, Vicky? I want to assume that this is your PR visa, because I know you're already here in Sydney, or rather in Australia. So I would always suggest, okay, my recommendation, and obviously I might be biased because I'm a social worker myself, but I would say go with the social worker route. But then if you feel like the conditions to get a positive assessment through AASW through the social worker route would be too tedious, okay, then you can do community worker. Okay, at the end of the day, in terms of PR, as long as the both of them are on the skilled migration list, you're fine. Okay, you can nominate community worker as your occupation, or you can go with social worker. Okay, and that is fine, honestly. A lot of people have, or rather the few people I know who have decided to go through the community worker route, even though they have a social work degree, is just because of the stringent requirements that the AASW have kind of put around the assessment. For instance, you have to, you must show them evidence, proof of your English language proficiency through an IELTS academic. They don't even accept the IELTS general. And it has to be an IELTS. They don't accept any of the other English tests. But the Aqua, on the other hand, they are flexible. They accept any English test, and they are not, they are not strict on which test you take as long as you meet the 7. So that's why a lot of people would go with community worker. So I feel there's really no benefit of going one way as against the other. As long as you get your PR, I think that's the most important thing. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. So yeah, going back, and please continue to drop your questions. So maybe I will go back to addressing one question that I have received a lot, okay? And this is for the benefit of anyone who is traveling from overseas, any of you who is still in Nigeria at the moment or any other country and you're hoping to come into Australia. One question that I get asked all the time is whether to travel as a family or to come in as a single person first, and then bring your family later. Obviously, this is for people who want to travel together as a family. I get asked that question a lot. Now, in my own experience, when we came into Australia, that was in 2015, we came separately. My husband came in first on a student visa, and then 2 months later, we joined him. Myself and the rest of the family joined him. Okay, and at that time too, I think that was a really common option for a lot of other people that I know who came in around the same time. So, hi, Oluyinka. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for joining. So, as I was saying, a lot of people came in through that route. But then, a few years down the track, I met other people who had come in together as a family. When I have asked around whether there's any benefits, whether there is any benefits to coming in as a single person as against a family, What I have often heard is that, immigration, in terms of fulfilling the GTE requirements and proving to them that you will be leaving after your course of study here, it can be a bit tricky when you're coming all together as a family. And so it is usually recommended that one person comes in first and then applies for the rest of the family soon after they come in, because it might be, it might raise eyebrows and raise red flags if you just pack up all of your family and you want to come in. And again, I also feel like it will depend on the duration of your studies. So if you're coming in here to study towards anything that is less than a 2-year program, and then you want to come all at once with all of your family, again, that might raise a few red flags. So yeah, in terms of that question, I would always say to people, if it is possible, come in separately, okay? But that's not to say that visas have not been granted to families altogether to come in, okay? Unfortunately, some of these questions are hard to answer because they are related to immigration, and some things related to the decisions that come out of your that immigration exercise. A lot of it is left to the discretion of the case officer. So, and it's really hard to know exactly what they are looking for, because these are some of those requirements that are not spelled out clearly on the website that you can read about. Okay, so I would say if you can, come in separately, okay? But as well, you can also try to come in as a family. Okay, so Chikere, you have a question. Hi, Azizat, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Chikere, you have a question. You said you're a mechanical engineer with 9 years experience in the aviation sector. You have 2 degrees, not great CGPAS. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, okay. Not great. Okay, I think I understand that. Would like to know my chances of migrating with my wife and 3 kids. Okay. So, as a mechanical engineer, Chikere, first of all, have you checked the skilled occupation list? And is your occupation on there? Now, what I would say is, if your occupation is on the SOL as a mechanical engineer with 9 years of experience in the aviation sector, I would like to believe that if you have all your documents ready, like everything to prove your 9 years of experience, like to demonstrate your years of experience and your skill level as well, then you have a chance to migrate. Some of the things that you should keep in mind when you think about migration would be things like your finances. That's number one. Think about your age, okay? If you're the primary applicants, think very closely about your age. Now, there are different options to come in, okay? If you come in through the 189 program, and you can watch my previous videos where I explain the differences between these skilled migration visas, okay? So if you come in through the 189, I guess the big thing to keep in mind about that is that you're not going to be getting any extra points through nomination, because the 189 program is federal based, which means you can settle anywhere in Australia. You're not applying to go to a particular region or a particular state. So in that case, you need to make sure that you're getting enough points for you to be invited. The cutoff at the moment is 65, but I would say this honestly, do not aim for 65. You have to have more points, okay? The more points you have, the better the chance of getting invited. And another thing, Chikere, is that I would advise you to do is to look at the history of invitation rounds in your particular occupation, just so that you get a good idea what other people have been scoring to get invited, because that is sort of like the benchmark. You want to see what has happened in previous invitation rounds. So once you have all of that, I don't think your CGPAS would, I don't think at this point it matters. You have 9 years experience, you have the degree, you have the paperwork. As long as you have the paperwork to demonstrate all of this, it shouldn't be a problem, okay? As long as your occupation is on the list. Now, in terms of migrating with your wife and 3 kids, it's kind of related to what I was talking about before, all those little things that you may not readily consider when you are migrating, or what you might not readily find information about online. So your 3 kids, are they up to school age? Do you have any of your kids below school age? If they are up to school age and you come in here not as a permanent resident, then keep in mind that you're going to be paying fees for them, okay? Keep in mind that you're going to be paying fees for them as international students. So the only people who are not required to pay school fees for their kids are people on permanent residency visas. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, in terms of the school fees, I can only speak for New South Wales, but as well, I've made a video previously where I touched a little bit on what happens around study for school-aged dependent children. So I will put a link to that video under this live stream when it's done, so you can check that out. But here in New South Wales, the school fees per child is about $6,000 a year. So for your 3 kids, you're looking at $18,000. Okay, that's if you're coming in as a temporary resident. And if you're coming in here as a temporary resident, maybe through studies, you also need to factor in your own study expenses as the primary applicant, or the person who will be an international student, right? So those are some of the things to keep in mind. Now, if your children are not yet of school age, you want to then start to think about how you're going to plan your finances with your wife, okay? Would it be the case that it would work better for you for your wife to stay home with the kids, or for one of you to stay home? It doesn't even need to be your wife. Whatever you guys decide, to stay home with the kids until they become of school age? Or would it be the case that your spouse will also be working? And in that case, you would then need to think about childcare. Now, if you're thinking about childcare, there are options around childcare. But one thing you also need to pay attention to, which I have seen a lot of people who did not realize that they needed to do this, was the fact that childcare has a long waiting list, sometimes up to 12 months. So if you're looking to get your kids into childcare, then you need to put their names down in a childcare service, like you need to put their names on a wait list. And sometimes it can take up to 12 months before you get a placement or you get a slot, okay? So these are some of the things to keep in mind. Another thing would be, where you eventually settle in Australia, like the city where you settle. You mustn't live in Sydney, because Sydney happens to be the most expensive of all the cities here in Australia. And where you would feel that the most, where you would feel the pinch of the cost of living, is in rent. Getting a rental, it's really expensive here. So maybe you want to think about your options. Would it be better for you to settle in another city? Brisbane is a big city, but it's a lot cheaper than Sydney. Melbourne is also a little cheaper than Sydney. There is Perth. So these are some of the things to keep in mind, and that I would advise you should pay attention to, and let some of those decisions influence what you eventually decide to do in your migration plans. Yeah. So Vicky, you have a question. You said, would you know what type of job titles would fall under community worker, or where I could find a list like that, such as youth support worker, etc.? Now, I am not sure if there's any place where you can get like a list of all the jobs that fall under community worker. But the thing is that, it would usually, these sorts of information would come up when you're job hunting. Okay, so you would see jobs that would say they need someone who has a degree in community work, for instance, and the job title itself might not even say anything about being a community worker. Okay, it could be, like you said, it could be youth support worker, it could be in any other social work type area. So I have seen adverts, for instance, that required someone to work in drugs and alcohol, for instance. But then when you read the job description, you will get to the point where they would say they want someone who's got a social work degree, or a community worker qualification, or a psychologist, or something like that. So it's not often that you would find jobs that specifically or explicitly say they're looking for a community worker. It would usually be a job that is specialized in one of these areas of, community work, and then they would say they're looking for someone with a community worker background. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, so Vicky, I think you said so expensive, same as Victoria. I think that's in reference to Sydney, right? Yeah, Sydney is very expensive. As a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, I received a notice from my real estate agent saying they were increasing the rent. And I'm like, for the rent I am paying here, I should be living in a mansion somewhere, like in another part of Australia. But yeah, Sydney is really expensive. So that is one thing that I feel people should really pay attention to before they come, especially families with children, because you're kind of restricted. For a single person, they can choose to live in shared accommodation. They can, there's a bit more flexibility as a single person. But when you come in with a family and with young children, you might feel like your hands are tied because you really do you may not want to be in shared accommodation for obvious reasons, but then you just feel like you're forced to pay such an exorbitant rent. So yeah, think about it closely before you come. Yes, so yeah, it depends on the skill set and background. Just addressing you, Vicky. There's also a rent crisis now, so now is a great time to be renting. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe things are improving, but I know that since the pandemic, especially 2020 in particular, strange things began to happen in the rental environment. Okay, so people who used to live in the city kind of ran away from the city because they just couldn't afford the rent. And so people left the city in big numbers. A lot of people moved out of state entirely. And so the rent in the city actually crashed, but then the rent in the suburbs went up because the demand suddenly increased. So I don't know, it's a very crazy situation right now. But again, going back to the comparison between Sydney and other states, I think the gap is really huge. So Olayinka, you have a question. Chioma, how do you get PR if you're coming in as a student and over 45? Um, Olayinka, I'm going to be honest with you. From 44 years and above, it's really difficult. Okay, I don't want to say it's impossible, but at the moment, the options that are available do not really cater to that age range. Okay, anyone 44, 45, it's really slim, a very, very slim chance of getting PR through any of the skilled migration options, except if, the other options might be through a partner visa, if you get married to someone who is either a permanent resident or a citizen, yeah, or if your partner is a permanent resident or a citizen, then you can apply for a partner visa. Then there is also the business visa, which, to be honest, is not a very accessible option for a lot of people because it requires a huge capital investment. So yeah, in terms of the skilled migration options, unfortunately, age is one very big and crucial factor in terms of getting PR through the skilled migration program. So 45 years is, unfortunately, it's just a little hard to get it at that age. Yes, okay, Vicky, now I get your comments. I understand where your comment was coming from. Yes, it is so expensive. Hi, Nanjida. Thank you for joining. I don't think I've seen you before. Yes. Yeah, so you said same here in Tazi. It is still hard to find a rented house. Very competitive, and the rent fee is more expensive than on the mainland. Wow. I've actually heard that Tasmania is quite expensive, and here you are confirming it. So it's yeah, it's crazy. I think in terms of rent, Perth might be a better option. Queensland, there's different towns in Queensland as well. So I feel like people should just spread out a bit more in terms of their options and not think that Sydney is the only place where you can live, or Melbourne, or even Brisbane. There are other beautiful nice cities that you can live around Australia. So Victoria, you said you asked me a question on Instagram already, but can you touch on living as a single parent with 3 children on a social work salary? Okay, yes, I remember that question, Victoria. I remember the question. Yes, so as a single parent with 3 children, I think I already touched a little bit on this question when I addressed Chikere. Yeah. So on a social work salary, I think first of all, social work salaries are kind of, there's a range there. At entry level, social workers can be earning anywhere between 65,000 up to 80,000, depending on where you work, obviously. And just on that note, I think it's important to share, maybe it's beneficial to share as well, what some of the fields of practice that I think um, pay a little better than others. So if you're a social worker in health, for instance, here in New South Wales, you might be earning anything from 75,000 as an entry level salary. And, you know, soon as you get into level 2, you might be earning up to 85,000. Another sector that pays really well is the university sector, which is where I work in. Okay, so they pay really well. And so you might be earning up to 90 and even above 90,000, okay, when you first start, and then obviously you start climbing. And so on that salary, I think you can survive, obviously with 3 children, but there are things that you would need to consider as well in terms of your budgeting. Okay, so again, going back to the living costs here in Australia generally, so you want to think very clearly around how much you want to pay on rent, what's the situation with your kids. Are they, if you're studying, if you, the parent, is studying as an international student, then it means your kids will be paying fees. So would you be able to afford those fees? 3 children, you're looking at about $18,000 in school fees per year for all of your 3 kids, okay? And that's just for tuition alone. There are other things to consider as well. So there's transport, there's like uniform costs, books, all those other resources as well. And then your daily living expenses. So if you think about all of that, then maybe you want to make a decision. You want to make really, you want to make, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like you want to be careful about how you budget. It's possible to live on that salary, okay, and live well, but you just need to be really careful and know that you might have to make some compromises as well, okay? So yeah. A few people have joined since then, so I'm just going to take my time to walk through the comments and the questions. So Monica, you said, hi, kindly explain which cities or towns and areas classified as regional areas. Is Cairns a regional area? Yes, it is. In Queensland, it is. But as well, I would want you to keep a pulse on that because it changes all the time. It changes all the time. I know that here in New South Wales, there was a time that Newcastle was considered a regional area, same as Wollongong, and then they got taken off the list as regional areas, but then got added back. So it's kind of hard to keep track of all the changes that happen. But I'm going to put a link in the description after this live session is done. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can actually check the regions or the towns and cities that are considered regions in each of the states. Okay, so off the top of my head, I may not remember all the towns that classify as regional areas for the purpose of migration, but I'm going to put a link in the description that you can check out. I'm just going to make note of that so I don't forget. So yeah, so regional area postcodes for migration. Thank you for asking that question. That's a really good question. So Vicky, you said Adelaide is okay-ish comparing to Sydney. Yes, I've actually heard that as well. It's just less job opportunities. Yeah, yeah, especially opportunities that are not health related. I've heard that, you know, the opportunities that are available mostly in Adelaide are related to health. But if you're in another field, then you might struggle a little bit to get a job there. Oluyinka, you said, thanks, Chioma. You're welcome. You're welcome. Vicky, you said you miss Sydney a lot. Such good restaurants, but I don't miss the rent prices. I know, yes. Sydney is I guess this is why a lot of people come to Sydney. You know, it's a very big city, and so we've got a good mix of things. It's like a melting pot, as they say, of different cultures. And yeah, the food scene here in Sydney is quite impressive, I would say. Yeah, so maybe you can come visit. I hope you do visit every once in a while, you know, get your food fix and then go back to where the rent prices are reasonable. So Victoria, you said you currently work in mental health. And Vicky, you said, would you say mental health social work gets paid better? Yes, mental health social workers get paid better. You know, just because there's more, I guess there's more responsibilities, high level responsibilities attached to that qualification. As a mental health social worker, you're able to actually assess and treat mental health issues, which is something that a social worker who is not mental health accredited cannot do that. So yeah, they do pay really well. Mental health social workers get paid a little higher than social workers who are not mental health accredited. Nice earrings. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I already have a social work degree, so hoping to go on a PR visa. Okay, Victoria, I'm happy to hear that. I'm rooting for you and I hope you get that visa, okay? Have you applied already, or is that something that's still in the works? You're still putting your documents together? How far along on that process are you? So, Vicky, I don't know, you said be strategic, and that was phrased as a question, but I don't know what it's in relation to. So, Nanjida, you said you have a question about after getting skills assessment for social work and having enough scores to apply for 190 or 189, how long do I need to have time for these processes? Not able to get 485 visa. Oh, okay. The 485 visa is the graduate visa, the one you get after you're done with your studies. Why are you not able to get the visa, Nanjida? I'm just kind of curious, and it's okay if you don't want to answer that question, okay? I don't want to put you on the spot. In terms of the skills assessment for social work, when I applied, it took 3 weeks for my skills assessment to be concluded. It took 3 weeks before I got a decision. But then I know of people who have waited more than 3 weeks. I know that some people waited up to 2 months before getting theirs. So unfortunately, I really can't say what the wait time is right now. Um, I don't know if they are dealing with the backlog as a result of the pandemic. So unfortunately, and I don't know anyone who has recently gone through that process, okay? But for me, it took between 2 and 3 weeks, if I remember correctly, okay? Um, I just hope it goes well for you, and I hope you still have some time on your visa, obviously, but yeah. So Victoria, you said you're gathering all documents. Yes, like I said, I'm rooting for you. Good luck with that. Hello, Aisha. Hello, hello. Glad you could make it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so Victoria, you said you're ready to send off to AASW. Fingers crossed it goes well. Hi, YouTube user. Thank you for joining. You have a question. How long does it take to get a dependent student visa? Okay, by dependent student visa, I want to believe you mean like when you apply for the rest of your family members after the primary applicant has come into Australia. For us, it took about 2 months. Yeah, it took about 2 months. But keep in mind that this was like 7 years ago. Right now, I can't say. To be honest, anything about visa processing and visa processing times at the moment, it's kind of hard to predict. Um, I have heard people say that I have heard of people who waited like up to 6 months before they got their visa. Some people have waited even longer. And then now that things have opened up again and people are free to travel, um, I feel like the maybe the system is a bit slow because they're working through the backlog. But then I don't know how far along they've come in clearing that backlog. I don't know if things have improved at the moment. So unfortunately, I really do not have a definitive answer around that. Okay, but for dependent student visas, I would say it usually doesn't take as long as the primary application, but I might be very wrong in saying that. I'm just not too sure. So Vicky, you said maybe Nanjida already used their 485. Yes, that might be the case as well. But I wish her all the best. I wish them all the best. So 3 weeks is not bad. Yeah. I think it was between 2 to 3 weeks. So Victoria, you said, do you need a different qualification other than social work degree to practice in the mental health sector in Australia? Um, no, you could work in the mental health sector as a psychologist, you could be there as a counselor or a psychiatrist. You don't have to be a social worker. There are lots of other professionals that can work in the mental health sector or even as a nurse. So, yeah. Aisha, back to you. So, Vicky, you said you have a question on placements. I'm a bit worried they will put me in a field that I want in my first placement, meaning I won't get a chance for that field for the final placement. Any advice? Okay. Um, the thing is that when I went to ACAP, okay, I went to ACAP myself. So the very first placement, they were really big on placing people in community practice, like in community development, okay? And like in my first placement, I worked as a project officer. So it was in your second placement, that is when they are usually very particular about putting you in a private practice setting, because it is a requirement that you must complete one of your placements in private practice settings. So if you're worried that they will put you in a field that you want, is it possible for you to speak to them ahead of time? Like, talk to them about what your plans are. It might be the case that you're hoping that when you do your second placement in a place that you like, you will be offered a job. So I don't know if that is the case for you or if that's what you're kind of expecting. So I would say just be transparent with your plans and your goals to your placement coordinators in school. Talk to them and see what they say, okay? But then, you know, you really can't say how things would swing at the end of the day. You might be in a place that you might go to a place that you feel you really like in your first placement, and then go to a place that you like even better than your first placement for your second one. I've seen these things happen. So I would say just keep an open mind. At the end of the day, whether you go to a place that you like for your first one or your second one, that's still something that would go into your CV. At the end of the day, you've gained that experience. But yeah, the first thing I would recommend would be for you to speak to the placement coordinators at your school and see if there's any assistance they can provide you around that. So Oluyinka, you said, is it true that parents can get PR through their PR holder children in Australia? Um, to be honest, I am not sure about this. Okay. I know that there are parent visas, all right, but I don't know if it is attached to, like when you say children, I don't know if you mean like children of school age, like children who are still attending high school or primary school, or if by children you mean like myself, I'm someone's child, right? I don't know if that's what you mean by them getting PR through their PR holder children, because yeah, there are parent visas, okay, but what I don't know is if it is attached to children, younger children having PR. I'm really not sure about that, but I'll have a look. I'll have a look, and then if I find anything, I'll put a link in the description, okay? All right, so I'm just making a note to myself so I don't forget. All right, so Vicky, you said you have waited for 482 temporary skill visa for 15 months before, so it really depends. Wow, that's a long wait. Oh my goodness. Okay, Nanjida, you confirmed that you already used your 485, and now I'm concerned if I will be able to have enough time to apply for those processes or not. Okay, yeah. I would say, just I want to believe you've already started the process, okay? Yeah, I wish I could say more than that, because some people apply for another student visa if they don't have the 485, like they can just apply for some other temporary visa to keep them in the country, like a student visa, to keep them in the country. And then once they progress to the stage where they apply for their PR and they are on a bridging visa, they can stop the student visa. So I don't know if that's a viable option for you, an option to explore maybe. But yeah, good luck with that. Good luck. I'm really hoping it works out okay for you. So Vicky, you're saying yes, you're hoping to get a job after the final placement. That's very true. Do you think it is okay to get into school or health government agencies for non-PR? For non-PRs, would that be a waste of my time? Well, I do know that some government jobs require for you to at least be a permanent resident. For school, like if you're talking about the school sector, like the university sector, as myself, they really do not care whether you have PR or not, as long as you're you're eligible to work in the country, as long as you're on a visa that allows you to work and you meet the other requirements of the job, they will take you. At least in the university that I work in, that's the case. Okay, they are not big on whether you're a permanent resident or not. So I don't know if that answers your question. Okay, so Oluyinka, you have clarified your question. You mean graduate children in Australia? Okay, like I said, I'm really not sure, but I'm going to look. I'm going to have a look. Like if that is I do know that there was a time that I checked, but that was long ago. There was a time that I tried looking into that and I couldn't find any information. I couldn't find any information. The only thing that I could find was that um, students who are below the age of 18 can nominate a parent's carer, or like a guardian who can come in and look after them during the duration of their stay. But once they clock 18, then that arrangement is no longer valid. So it's only valid for children below the age of 18. But again, like I said, that was information I got some time ago, like a few years ago. So I don't even know if that arrangement is still in place right now. But I am happy to have a look and see if I would find anything for you in that regard. Oh, okay. So you're asking if, okay, so your question was related to placements. No, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, Vicky, because I think any experience you can get, wherever you can get it, is valid. Okay. It's something that can open more doors for you in future. So if you can get into a government agency or a health agency, please do so. And if that's something you're interested in, okay, you can work towards it. I just know, like for instance, when I was studying, obviously still on a temporary visa, there was a time that I was really keen on working in a hospital, like doing my placement in the hospital. And it did look like it was going to be possible. The only thing that held me back was the fact that I needed to have some vaccines. And by the time I would have taken all of those vaccines, it would have been too late. So at the end of the day, I decided not to go with that option. But I also remember that there were other international students as well who did their placements in hospitals. So yeah, I think you can actually do your placement in a hospital. And I think it is really good experience, especially if you're interested in working in the same sector after you graduate. So Vicky, you said, okay, you're addressing Nanjida. You said you're in the same boat. You also don't have the 485 anymore. However, you're in South Australia, which has a PR pathway for high GPA SA graduate students. Does STARS have that? Oh, wow, that's good information, Vicky. Thanks for sharing. I hope Nanjida is still here and they've seen your reply. Yeah, that's really good to know. Okay, I feel like getting a PR is only getting harder and harder. Yeah, unfortunately, unfortunately, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, and this is the thing that really confuses me about the PR process to Australia. There's all this messaging and all this talk about wanting people, needing people, trying to attract people to come to certain, you know, come to certain areas in Australia to boost the population or come in and support, some critical job shortages and all of that. But then when it actually comes to setting the criteria for people to be able to then take up that invitation, they just make it hard. And so you ask yourself how genuine they are in wanting people to come in the first place. So yeah. Um, but one thing I always say to people is information is key. As long as you're staying on top of the information, and you're getting the right information, one of the best ways to ensure that you're doing that is to stay on top of that immigration website. Like, stick yourself to that immigration website, read everything there is to know, and keep coming back. Don't read about it, you know, and then you forget it for 2 months and think that the information you read 2 months ago is still valid. Things change all the time. So you just need to stay on top of all the updates and all the changes. Okay, that would help to a certain extent, I know. Chikere, you said, thank you for the first response. You're welcome. 189 is really competitive, scores as high as 90, and the highest are picked first, irrespective of who applied. Any hints on the nomination visas? Okay, yes. So yeah, 189 is very competitive. But I guess the advantage of the nomination visas over the 189 is just the fact that you can get extra points from the states that you're nominating to come into. The 190 will give you extra 5 points. Then if you choose to go regional, I think that's where the juice is. That's the juiciest offer of all. You get extra 15 points. So maybe you really want to think about that while you're making your plans. And someone did ask earlier about the regional areas in terms of migration. And I said I was going to put a link, um, a link that will kind of clarify the postcodes or the areas around the country that classify as regional areas for migration purposes. So maybe also keep an eye out for that link so that you can then plan yourself. If you're interested in regional migration, then you can think about what cities to go to in each of the states. So Oluyinka, you said, thank you, Chioma. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. It is so much easier in Canada. Yeah, it is actually. A lot of people are moving to Canada at the moment. And yes, I don't know how much longer it sort of seems like an open invitation that Canada has issued to everyone. And I don't know how long that is going to stay open for. But yeah, Canada is a big contender at the moment. So, Nanjida, you said, thank you for your suggestion. And yes, that is probably what I need to apply to extend more time. And Adviki, thanks for sharing. I might need to check that, as I have never heard about that high GPA here. Yes, definitely check that out, Nanjida, and I hope it's an option that you're able to take up. Hello, Prince. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for joining. So, yes, so Nanjida, Vicky's got more advice for you, to speak to a migration agent and hopefully find a pathway to PR. Otherwise, like Chioma said, you could always get another student visa to gain more work experience. Yes, good luck. Good luck to you, Nanjida. Good luck to you, Vicky, as well. I'm rooting for the both of you. Um, yeah, so Irene, oh, I'm so glad you could make it, Irene. Thank you so much for joining. You said you're on a student visa, 500 subclass. Is it possible to get an employer who can sponsor me to get another visa? I would say if you've got the required experience and you find an employer who is willing to sponsor you, as long as you've got the required experience and documents and everything that they are needing, yes, you can actually yeah, you can explore that option as well. Okay, so being on a student visa does not stop you from exploring other options, just as long as you're qualified for it and you can demonstrate how you qualify for those other options. Okay, yeah. So Vicky, you said you have friends in Canada that have already applied, already got their PR, studying and working there for 6 years. Yeah, it's like I said, it's just Canada is a big option at the moment, even the UK as well, from what I have seen. um I'm just hoping, especially given how Australia started off this year, I was really hoping that they would have more flexibility around the options that they are offering, and I don't know if they've got plans for that. July is usually like a big month in terms of migration here to Australia, because that is when they do their planning for the next migration year and all of that. So I'm really hoping that there is there is more planning going on to be more flexible and offer more flexible options to people this year. So let's see how that goes. Good luck to anyone going to Canada. Okay, you said thank you for the encouragement. You're welcome. Irene, you said you're a social worker with 7 years experience. Yes. Okay, that's great. If you can find someone to sponsor you, that's fine. Um, there's a video that I am going to link. That video actually does not belong to me. Okay, it's from someone else that I happen to I just chanced on their YouTube channel, and it just so happened that they came in here through sponsorship. And I thought that video had some really great tips and information for anyone who is looking to get sponsored. So after this live stream, I am going to put a link to that video. I already spoke to the owner and they are more than happy for me to share the link anytime. So I am also going to link their video into this live stream when I am done. And maybe you want to watch that video. I think there's golden nuggets in that video and a lot of great tips that you can follow as well in terms of getting sponsorship. So I'm just going to make a note. Yeah. Hi, Koti. How are you? Thank you so much for joining. Oh, thanks for sharing as well. Thank you. Yes. And actually, I haven't said that here. I'm like, please remember to give me a thumbs up, on your way out. Thank you so much. Sorry, I kicked my tripod. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so I can't see any more questions, but please keep them coming if you've got more questions. But in the absence of any other question, I would go back to talking about some of the. Okay, there's a question here. Chioma, how are you feeling since you spoke to your supervisor? Oh, I actually haven't spoken to my supervisor yet. I have an appointment with them this coming week, but since then I have been fine. Like after opening up to my manager and just talking to them about, some of the struggles I have had in, yeah, so after talking to them about some of the struggles I have had, at work recently, I feel a lot lighter and I feel better. So I feel like I am on the mend right now. Things are looking up once more. So thank you so much for checking in. Thank you so much for checking in. I appreciate that. I am a lot better, and which is why I am doing this live. I was actually hoping to do this live like 2 weeks ago, but I just was not in the mental space to be able to do it. So yeah, thank you for asking. So Koti, you said let them thumbs up now so they don't forget. Okay, you've all heard it. Please thumbs up now so you don't forget. Thank you for that reminder. Yes. So I was saying that I would go back to just talking a little bit about something else that I felt I have also got a lot of questions about. So people asking me what sorts of jobs are available for international students or for temporary visa holders when they first come in. So some of those jobs that we call survival jobs, right? So here in Australia, the ones that are really common are jobs in support worker jobs in disability services or in aged care. And then there's also pick and pack jobs. So these are jobs that you do in a factory where you help with packaging products. And then a lot of males find themselves in the construction industry working as laborers or um, forklifting, yes. Um, and then there's also food delivery or Uber driving. So these are some of the jobs that are really common for students in particular who are on a temporary visa here in Australia, okay? Now, in terms of the pay, because people have also asked whether it's possible to fund your studies from the pay that you receive from some of these jobs, I know people who have been able to fund their studies from the pay from these jobs, but then I will be honest with you, it is something that requires some sacrifice, okay? It requires a lot of compromise and yeah, um, you have to be really careful with your budgeting and all of that to be able to pull that off because unfortunately school fees just keep increasing every year. And I personally feel like um, wage increase is not keeping up with the increments in cost of living. So while I would say that it is easy for you to fund your studies with whatever survival job you're able to get, I want you to have a realistic lens on the possibility of that. Okay, so yeah. Please share if you have a community. Thank you, Koti, for that reminder. Okay, there's another question from YouTube user. You said, so Chioma, for PhD students in Australia, what PR option will you suggest? And how is the nomination pathway nowadays? So for PhD students in Australia, all the skilled migration options, that's the 189, the 190, and the 491, those are all good options, okay? Obviously, again, depending on your occupation and whether it is on the list. But another option would be the global talent visa. So maybe you also want to check that out. That's another strong option, especially for PhD holders or people who are really top level in their career. So yeah. So you said, how is the nomination pathway nowadays? I think it's alive and well. The nomination pathway is still there. It's still a really strong option. I would only say that because the nomination pathway is linked to particular states and particular regions, I would just say do your homework in terms of what state you want to go to and how that occupation has fared in that particular state, okay? But it is alive, it is well, it is kicking, okay? And it is still a really strong, viable option. I hope that answers your question. So Vicky, you said you're also thinking of getting into disability support work soon. Good luck with that, Vicky. Again, that's more experience, that's more things that you can add to your CV, and that's good. So you said, Koti, you said, let me get help them in packaging. Yeah, you can come in and help them to package, no problem. Aisha, you said we can't wait for the video. Okay, no problem. The video will drop soon. Okay. Um, I'll put the link to that video. Vicky, it is so hard to be studying full time and working. The workload can get intense. So you gotta be good at time management. Shoma, how did you manage to work and study? Yeah, yes, it is hard to be studying full time and working. It really is hard. I think for me, I came in here with my husband. We had kids, so it was a very strong tag team effort. One person working, the other person at home, one person working mornings, the other person working nights, one person working weekdays, the other person working weekends. It was always like that. And then there was actually a spell when we first arrived when I sat home with the kids 24/7. I wasn't going anywhere. I had a business that I was doing from home. So it was kind of, I was earning some money that way. But I think for the first almost 1 year, I stayed home with the kids, and that was what was best for us at that time. So it's a lot of adjusting, reviewing your situation, reviewing your plans, and just being really flexible, because you really can't be rigid when you can't be rigid with your goals and your ideas around how to reach those goals, especially in those first moments, or when you're studying and then you have to juggle all these other things as well. It's about responding to the situation and responding to what the situation needs at that time. So yeah, that was what we did. So Koti, you said wage increase doesn't match up with salary. Yeah, I don't know if that was what I said, or if I said wage increase is not kind of matching up with cost of living. So yeah, that's my opinion. I don't feel like the wage increase is enough to offset the increase in um, cost of living. Yeah. So also to not burn out. How did you manage to work and study? Also to not burn out. Yeah, Vicky, it was really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It was really hard. Those years when my husband and myself were studying, and we also still had to look after the kids. It was really hard. But I think the thing is, you need to be very mindful of looking after yourself as well. And it was a realization that I came to, unfortunately, the hard way. Okay. I should have paid more attention. Like, we should have paid more attention to what was happening for us mentally as well. But maybe we didn't do that when we should have. And so, yeah, my health suffered a little bit for that. Um, so you just have to, like, you have to put limits on how far you can go. Don't go until you crash, absolutely crash, because you might feel like you're okay, but then things are happening for you mentally that will ultimately affect your physical well-being as well. So it's just like a chain reaction. You want to make sure at every point that you're paying attention to all of it, like the totality of your well-being. You need to think about that. And that's why, when people say things like, um, when people have asked me questions about funding their education from the casual work that they get here, I am really careful when I answer that question, because while it is possible, I do know that there are lots of other things you would have to deal with in that time when you are working so hard to fund your education. And yeah, so people should just be like, stay in tune with your health. That is what I would say. Know when to stop, know when to pause. Okay. Pushing yourself harder and pushing yourself beyond your limits at the end of the day doesn't do anyone any good. um yeah, so you just need to be really careful. Self-care is so important. Please don't crash. Yes. All right. I am aware that this is past 8 already, and I don't know if you have any more questions for me, so I am just going to start winding down. But I just wanted to thank every single one of you who made it to this session. I am so grateful that you found the time to hang out with me today, and I have enjoyed hanging out with you. Okay, so thank you all so much for joining me on here. Like I said, I am going to leave all those links to some of the things we've discussed today in the description box, maybe by Monday, not today, obviously, because this is like past 8 and I have other things to do this weekend. Okay, so talking about looking after yourself and self-care. All right, I am just going to take the weekend off and then I will upload those links. Okay, I think there's another question from YouTube user. You said, how difficult is it being a PhD student in Australia? Well, I've not studied a PhD, so, but I can speak from the experience of other friends who I know have studied a PhD here. I think some of them describe it as a fulfilling experience, okay, but as well, I mean, it's also got its own challenges and stresses. So, but I like to focus on the positive. So when someone has said to me that they found the experience fulfilling, I then tend to think of whatever struggles they have experienced as worthwhile, because nothing good comes easy, right? So yeah, if you're looking to study a PhD here in Australia, I would go by what other people have said to me about the fact that they found it to be good and supportive. People have spoken to me about having really supportive supervisors. And I think that's a really important thing for anyone studying a PhD. So that's another thing. They found the experience to be full of supportive people. And yeah, so in that regard, I think I would dwell on the positives. Obviously, any kind of study would involve some kind of stress, right? It's going to be stressful on some level. But if you've got all those supports along the way in your journey, I want to believe that it just makes you feel better about those challenges and you don't feel so overwhelmed and you can actually focus on your end goal. So yeah. Thank you so much, Chioma. That's from YouTube user. You're welcome. Thank you, sis, so much also. Your videos are really helpful. Thank you, Irene. I'm so happy to hear that. Oluyinka, thanks a lot. You're welcome. But Manuel, how are you? I feel like I haven't seen you in a minute. I haven't heard from you, not seen you. But yeah, thanks for joining, Bob Manuel, and you're welcome. So yeah, so Vicky, you said your friend is doing a PhD and she enjoys it. So you've heard it, YouTube user, you've heard it. All the people that I know who have studied a PhD here have had really good things to say about the experience, okay? That's not to say that they've also not spoken about some of the challenges they faced, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's all worth it. So you said, okay, one last question. Were they able to combine it with a full-time job in healthcare? I don't know anybody who studied a PhD full-time who was also doing a full-time job. A lot of them were studying full-time but working part-time. So I am not sure. I'm not sure about being able to manage a full-time job, studying a PhD full-time as well. I would want to believe that one of them would have to be on a part-time basis. Like it's either you're working full-time and studying part-time or the other way around. So yeah. Oh, Bob Manuel, you're in Australia now. You're in Sydney. Woo! I'm so happy to hear that. Wow. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying your experience so far. Yeah. Um, that's great. I'm really, really happy to hear that, Bob Manuel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're enjoying the Sydney rain. Okay, so Vicky, another question. You said you don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable, but I do worry if I would face racism working in social work and how to deal with it. Um, do you have any advice on that? Well, to be honest, I feel like my experience since qualifying as a social worker has been really good, overwhelmingly good. Like, if I have to talk about racism, I actually have to sit back now and think of occasions where I might have experienced racism, which I think already gives you an idea what that experience has been. Okay, so it's been really good. I've really not had any racist experiences. But again, I also know that my jobs and all the jobs I have done as a social worker so far, um, maybe because of the environment of these jobs, maybe that's why I have been sort of shielded from having a lot of those sorts of experiences. In my first job, I was on the telephone lines. I was a crisis counselor, a trauma specialist counselor on a crisis line. So I didn't get to see my clients face to face. Okay. And yes, there are people who at certain points would have picked up on my accent, but I've never really felt like anyone picked on it to highlight it as a negative thing, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I've had people who have picked up on my accent and they would ask, oh, you sound different. Where are you from? And things like that. But I wouldn't really say that those were racist experiences. And then in my current job, even though I do see clients face to face, I feel like there's so many, the environment of the job in the first place already kind of lends itself to people being open to diversity because it's a university, lots of international students from all over the place. And so it's also reflected in the staff demographics, if you get what I mean. So I've really not experienced racism. But yes, in my personal life, even if not at work, every once in a while, you just come across an ignorant fellow. And that's how I choose to see them. I just see them as ignorant, but at the same time, I see those experiences as not something that I should take responsibility for in any way. And that would also include, providing education to them and being like, no, what you said is racist. I'm not, no, I don't even have the energy for that. I don't even engage with it at all. Like if people are racist, that's their business, except of course, it's something that affects me personally or affects maybe like my kids. Of course, in such situations, I might then be really strong on addressing it. But for the most part, I just tend to ignore. And yeah, I don't feel like I need to give my energy to ignorance. Yeah. So thank you so much, Chioma. That's from Chikere. You're welcome. You're welcome. But Manuel, you said the rains have been crazy, but on the overall, it's okay. Thanks for your support, Chioma. I'm happy to hear that you've been managing okay, despite the very wet Sydney we've had in several weeks now. Abigail, hello. Yes, you made it this time, and I'm happy you made it. I hope you caught the bulk of, the session because I am actually winding down, but it's so good to see you again. Yep. So Vicky, you said, yeah, we're not doing free education and labor. Thank you, Chioma. That is good to hear. Thank you so much, Vicky. You're always very supportive and I appreciate it. All right, everyone, I think this is it. I might have to sign off at this point, but again, I just want to say thank you all so much. I always enjoy hanging out with you. I enjoy the interaction. I think it's, you bring all that energy and it just makes me really happy. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. And I hope, depending on where you are, you have a great day or a great night, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.